Good day, Frank Comito from the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, where I serve as a special advisor and was formerly the CEO and Director General. Thank you for inviting our participation in today's session. Hopefully you'll find it helpful in your deliberations. Allow me to pull up my presentation at this point, okay? Today's presentation will focus on investment opportunities for building a resilient economy in the Caribbean and the cooperation between Caribbean and Latin American DFIs with a focus on tourism, as I've been asked. What we're going to talk about is first a little bit of background about the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, CHTA, and our role in investment support. We'll talk also about tourism's global and regional economic performance. I think that backdrop would be very helpful for you. About Caribbean tourism's resilience, our history with that, some changing industry dynamics that you should be aware of, challenges and opportunities for small and medium-sized tourism enterprises based on recent research we've undertaken, and development financial institutions' roles, suggested roles in supporting tourism's economic resiliency. So let's jump right into it. About CHTA. It's the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. We're almost 60 years in existence. We're basically a private sector-led organization, but also a collaborative organization. We work closely with our counterpart, the Caribbean Tourism Organization in the region, which represents the public sector, as well as with numerous other groups and organizations. We're also a federation of 33 national hotel and tourism associations throughout the Caribbean basin. We have direct members as well, including all the major hotel brands, allied members, and we have partnerships and relationships with a range of NGOs, tourist boards, and government entities that work in the region, like CARICOM, CTO, CARFA, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, SEDEMA, IDB, OAS. There's quite a list of folks that we work with closely. Our areas of focus are advocacy, marketing and public relations from a B2B point of view. We don't do direct consumer marketing. Product development, investment promotion and facilitation, people, institutional and professional development, and research and knowledge sharing. Our roles in facilitating tourism investments go way back. We established the world's first annual tourism investment conference in 1997, and that's actually going on today as we speak in Miami. It brings together governments, private sector, the private sector, various areas, financial institutions, investment agencies to explore and broker tourism investments. And it's contributed to the region's growth of licensed accommodation rooms from just over 80,000 in the early 1990s to over 300,000 today. We're also an advocate for local investment policies which support and stimulate development. We're a clearinghouse for data and information to support tourism investments. We also sponsor annually the largest tourism-related B2B event for the region called Caribbean Travel Marketplace, which stimulates a tremendous amount of business activity for tourism in the region. We support local investments in human and physical infrastructure in a variety of ways. We're also heavily involved over the years, the last 25 years, in crisis management and recovery and support, helping the industry to rebound and recover as quickly as possible through readiness and response management. Public relations is a strong part of what we do related to investment and building trade media and investor confidence in the Caribbean. And the diversification of tourism, supporting and improved linkages and reducing leakages through a variety of means. The CHTA does it to some extent, but a lot of that happens on the ground as well. We have some very active destinations. Jamaica is a perfect example supporting and facilitating tourism and linkages and reducing leakages. Sustainable investments, we focus on that adaptation of existing investments, building for the future. We've done a lot of training in that area in terms of investing in sustainable retros and new builds and so on. And collaboration and partnerships underscores everything that we do. We're a regional partner with multilateral institutions and organizations to leverage resources and support, get things done. Let's talk a little bit about tourism's global and regional economic performance prior to COVID initially, but we'll also talk about it in that COVID and hopefully post-COVID context. The World Travel and Tourism Council has just released their latest global projected growth data, but we're going to look right now at 2019 and 2020 data to give you an idea of the expanse of the industry globally. Tourism is the largest industry in the world globally. It employs globally over 1 out of every 10 people in the world and contributes significantly to GDP and other related activities. And as you can see here, it continues to grow. Prior to the pandemic, it was clearly the fastest growing industry in the world, outpacing GDP, tourism GDP throughout the world. Regionally, in 2019, we're using 2019 because that was the last full year of really solid performance data. We had a full year before the pandemic set in. We'll talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic in a second. But we're right about where these 2019 figures are right now. We're getting close to where they were in 2019 right now in 2022. In 2019, tourism represented almost 14% of GDP in the Caribbean basin, or $58.9 billion. It represented 15.2% of jobs supported by travel and tourism, 2.8 million jobs in our region. 3.4% of travel and tourism growth that was our growth rate with tourism, travel and tourism for the region, whereas the growth rate for the overall economies in the Caribbean were 1.9%. So you can see we basically almost doubled the growth output in GDP within tourism versus the broader areas of the Caribbean's economies. The Caribbean is one of the most tourism-dependent regions in the world, and countries where travel and tourism contributes most to GDP. If you can see the top 10 there, you can see quite a few of our Caribbean destinations in there: BVI, Aruba, Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas. And then when you look at it in employment, it's very similar number in there. You've got St. Lucia in there as well, and Barbados in terms of the top 10 globally. So it is a very integral part of our economy, and we are somewhat dependent on it. And if you look here, you'll see the levels of GDP, tourism-related contribution to GDP. In a majority of countries in the Caribbean, tourism supports more than 25% of the economy, and tourism dependence is on the rise. And many destinations are beginning to diversify within tourism as well. Tourism impacts all sectors of the economy and government. Indirect and induced impact, direct tourism expenditure touches just about every aspect of life in just about every area in the Caribbean. And you can see here the revenue that's generated, the multiplier effect on employment and dollar generation and so on as it trickles throughout the economy, touches every aspect of what we do. It allows us and supports government services, support services, education, public safety, infrastructure development, and so on. So its impact is quite pervasive, more than people typically realize. And from a tax point of view, the indirect impact of that is quite significant because every one of these icons that you see here has a transaction, has employees, has transactions related to it. So all of that has a broad impact on our local economies. We're incredibly resilient, and that's not by chance. It's by a lot of planning and preparation and readiness to deal with crisis situations. As we're recovering from COVID right now, the Caribbean is the fastest growing area of the region of the world for tourism's revival and restoration right now. And that's not by chance. It's because of our partnerships, our collaboration, our hard work, recognition by governments and the private sector on what it takes to recover and rebound as quickly as possible. And we've been doing that in as safe a manner as possible. Prior globally, our experience on dealing with crisis as an industry is getting much better. The World Travel and Tourism Council tracks crisis recovery from crisis, from natural disasters, tourism incident, terrorism incidents, political instability, diseases and outbreaks, and so on. And 22 years ago, it would take significantly longer to recover. But today, our average recovery times have been cut almost in half from what they were 20 years ago or so. And that's because of our planning and so on. So it's really important to recognize that. And when you look at it in the region, our recovery over the past 10, 15 years from recessions, major hurricanes, Zika, and so on, you see that it continually bounces back. As you see here, the visitor arrivals bounce back fairly quickly and steadily, and the recovery time is increased. And we can see that from what happened with some major hurricanes that hit the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and St. Martin. By example, you see the recovery time here is actually under that global average right now from 2017 to 2019 versus where things were at earlier. And we see the same kind of recovery period for room occupancy, hotel room occupancy, where it bounces back fairly readily. In terms of average daily room rates, though, it takes longer to bounce that back. That's why we discourage the industry from slashing rates following a crisis or a downturn in the economy and so on, because it takes 7 to 8 years to get your rates back to where they were before the pandemic or before a crisis situation. And we're getting better at that, much better. So looking ahead, though, according to Forward Keys, a data partner with us, QT, just by example, for 2022 looks more promising for international travel globally. But what you're seeing here is the recovery, getting it to the level it was prior in 2019. We're about 27% under right now as a region. But you can see how much all of the rest of the world is far much, they've got a longer road to travel to get to 2019 levels. So we are recovering at a good clip. And Caribbean and Latin American destinations are leading the summer outlook in terms of tourism business. So it's rebounding at a good clip. In fact, here you see on the left side there, you see that Costa Rica, Aruba, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Pakistan, and Mexico, at least through July and August, are going to outperform what they were in 2019, which was a banner year. So the industry is moving in a good clip with recovery. As you can see again here, we're outpacing the world in visitor arrivals growth out of the pandemic. You can see very clearly here that U.S. Virgin Islands has exceeded what they were prior to. But you see at least 5 or 6 other destinations there are actually 8 destinations are running at about close to 80% of what they were in 2022. And that bodes well for the economies. Let's talk about changing industry dynamics. The transformative power of tourism, realizing our potential, understanding new travel dynamics, from survival to recovery to flourishing, it really comes from understanding the dynamics that are going out there in the marketplace. And this affects all of us as well. The Caribbean is well positioned to recover and grow through tourism. And our key assets are very fundamental, but they're strong. We have strong customer loyalty and repeat business, unmatched natural beauty, our proximity and ease of access to major markets, our diverse product, our resiliency and ability to quickly bounce back from adversity, as you saw previously. We have multi-generational and interest appeal. We are committed to health, safety, and I could do a whole bit on that. We're built for wellness. So in a crisis situation, as we're recovering, that's why we're so appealing. It's a great place to escape. And we have a culture of great hospitality. Our people are really a tremendous asset. And we have decades of building a Caribbean brand recognition. So focal points for reshaping tourism in the Caribbean. We need to constantly adapt to changing consumer behaviors, and we'll talk about those in a second. We need to build a culture of standards and guidelines, improve energy efficiencies, protect and enhance the environment, train and empower our people, strengthen socioeconomic and eco-linkages, and close those leakages. We need to embrace new technologies, accentuate and differentiate our culture and diversity. We need to partner and collaborate and coordinate, all of us, much more effectively than we have. We've been doing it increasingly better, but we've got to even be better than we are. And we need to market and communicate our stories constantly. Here, I want to speak to just the highlighted area here because it speaks to travelers' behaviors and how they're changing, because that affects investments. And not only investments, how are you operating? Are you focused on interests, needs, demands of the consumer and the traveler in order to attract and retain business and grow your business? But MMGY Global does a lot of consumer research, and I just want to point to the highlighted area here where they researched last year top vacation motivators, and this would have never been as prevalent as it is right now. But you'll see that relaxation always up there in the top, but exploration 74% is saying it's a motivator. Experience different cultures 70%, experience new cuisine 67%. Self-discoveries, 45%. So you see the dynamics of this traveler are shifting quite a bit. While sun, sand, and sea and laying on the beach is really still very appealing, people want more exploration, experience, and activity, and so on. So we're seeing that, and that needs to drive new ways of doing business and attracting business and going into business and looking for new business opportunities. Our incredible region, it's a menu of options for the traveler, our diversity, our nature, culture, experience, and heritage, our rhythms of all types, our people, they're joyful, soulful, charming, warm, resourceful, and proud, and our proximity, all absolute strengths as a destination. And our appeal is multiple. It's as to the adventurer, to romance, various types, to the solo traveler, luxury, LGBTQ, the cultural explorer, families, eco explorers. We have broad appeal, which is a real asset. But looking ahead, we need to look at tourism from an investment point of view, not just on the dollars and cents, the marketing, getting people in room, the heads in beds, as we say. We need to approach it developmentally, and the United Nations World Sustainability Goals from the UNWTO and UN are quite instructional in that they tell us to look at the broad picture. We've got to approach tourism development in a macro sense, so you can see they touch on every aspect of it, and that's how our program and our activities have shifted over the years, and you're seeing increasingly more businesses involved in looking at it from a macro point of view. Our challenge, let's talk about the challenges and opportunities for small and medium-sized tourism enterprises. We just completed a study with the Organization of American States, and we're just finalizing all the recommendations from that report, so I'm not going to give you the details of it. It's quite extensive. We'll be having a session in Jamaica next month in July to roll them out with the Organization of American States. And some of the key Caribbean insights for small and tourism enterprises. STEs are an integral part of the region's tourism-based economy. Over half of the region's hotels are under 75 rooms and independently owned by Caribbean nationals. And that doesn't count the vacation home ownership, the vacation home rentals that are out there that have flourished in the past 10 years. Most tourism startups prior to the pandemic were small tourism enterprises, tour operators, restaurants, manufacturing, attractions, meetings and events management, support, accommodation rentals, and so on. The sharing economy and community-based tourism enterprises are fueling small tourism enterprise growth. Small tourism enterprises are vulnerable to climate variability and change, other natural and man-made hazards and external shocks. They don't have the resources of the larger companies to be able to plan, to be able to recover as quickly as possible. So there is vulnerability there. There's inexperience and by many of the operators, and the informal nature of some STEs heightens their exposure to additional operational risks and business sustainability. And that becomes particularly a key factor in the resilience and sustainability to quickly rebound and recover from disasters and crisis situations. The importance of tourism to national economies and the regional role of STEs are fundamental to the need for policy adoption to support STE business continuity. And assessing challenges and establishing recommendations are based on an integrated, holistic, and process-oriented approach, as we have taken with what we've just completed with our survey. But I just want to highlight a couple parts of that survey. We asked various types of tourism enterprises. We weren't just talking to hotels, we were talking to a range of businesses. In fact, over 500 Caribbean small tourism enterprises. We asked them if they had a business continuity plan. I'm just pointing out a couple of things that I really think had to go into the investment decision. If they have a crisis management plan, and if they have liability insurance. And starkingly, right here, you'll see that many of them don't. So there is a need in terms of their viability, their ability to continue to succeed as a business, because we know that about 1 out of every 3 small businesses fail within several years. But we see the vulnerability that they have here in all areas. So there's a need for additional attention into those particular areas. Another area that jumped out in our research was the low business digitization capacities, and that results in lost sales and lost efficiency opportunity. So are your operations digitalized? Can you take payments digitally, which is a huge factor today? And look at the vulnerability that exists out there with small tourism enterprises. There's clearly a need for support and development in those areas. So next, we want to look at the development financial institutions' roles in supporting tourism's economic resiliency. And again, many of you are probably doing many of these things, if not all of them, and other things that I haven't identified, but I'd like to just play out to a couple of them. You can play a role in facilitating STE growth and development and minimizing business failures in areas that I've identified are research, serving as a clearinghouse and connectivity point for a range of research, tourism-related research, investment-related research, business success-related research, performance, trend lines, benchmarking, and so on. Collaborating with other organizations and institutions on research and data gathering and dissemination. In the area of training, you can lead and partner to conduct demands-based training for prospective and existing STEs. And we identified several of those areas in that small tourism enterprise research project that we've done, and I highlighted a couple of them just now. Financing, working with public and private financiers to support and improve financing programs to support STEs. They have a huge challenge in that area. And there's obviously some training that needs to occur in that area, but also some policy kinds of support as well. Technical support, supporting and establishing mentoring, assessments, counseling, and training efforts to assist STEs with business planning, problem solving in areas of need. Coordination, partnerships with ministries of tourism, local hotel and tourism associations, other entities, and education and training institutions, and leveraging those resources within yourselves and expertise to support STEs. And finally, in the area of advocacy, advancing programs and policies to support STE growth and development, and pulling in that coordinating effort with other groups like ours to help to identify where advocacy and programs and policies can make a better difference. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Hopefully you found this helpful. and it will prompt discussion on matters on the matter as in your upcoming deliberations. On behalf of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, thank you. There's some contact information there if you'd like to get in touch with us. Have a good day.